Good evening. Welcome to the Raymond Select Board meeting for January 12th, 2016. Happy New Year to everybody. I got an email midday today from Lonnie, who was unable to make it back up here due to a couple of things. One, I'm guessing, is the weather. So Lonnie will not be here this evening. So we'll get right to it. Minutes of our previous meeting would have been sent out a long time ago, and is included in our packet. Any suggestions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any other comments? All those in favor? Approved 4-0. Under new business, once again, I'm bringing the possibility of a recreational facility in front of the board. A lot's happened in the last few months, which Don will go over as a brief history. And I think that the board will find this far more, I guess, Raymond-sized when you see all the details than some of the other projects that I've drifted out in front of us. We did still have monies left over from monies that were approved to look at the site last year, so we've used those to do a quick preliminary and get ready for this presentation this evening. So, Don?
Thank you, Mike. Well, as you know, the town has a couple of properties that we looked at. The Egypt Road property, that's going way back now, was precluded from use for development as a rec site because it's too wet and not developable. We then moved on to the Patricia Avenue site, which is constrained by only one access way. It's otherwise, I think, relatively suitable site, but the traffic that would be generated from a new rec facility would be, I think, pretty overwhelming, and offer 302 into that facility, you know, a difficult thing to add to the traffic that already exists. And so we did explore, as you know, alternate access ways and other options to try to mitigate that unsuccessfully. So what happens now is I was at a meeting unrelated to any of this. It was a meeting of recreation user groups. And so I was asked to give a brief update about what was going on, and so I did that and outlined what I just told you. And so timing's everything. Brenda Cowett, who just came in, hi, asked me if we had given any thought to a really old proposal, which was one that had been made by Tim Davison. Tim has 13 acres on the North Raymond Road, and about a dozen years or so ago, 10 to 12 years ago, had offered that to the town on a no-cost lease basis. He's not interested in selling it, but he is interested in seeing it utilized for town recreational purposes, if that would be of interest to the town. And so she asked me if what had happened to that, and I said that I knew of it because in those days it was a skate park proposal, but that the town hadn't pursued it. And so anyhow, I consulted with Mike, and Mike said, sure, let's reapproach Mr. Davidson. So Chris Hansen, who works with him regularly, called him up. We set up a meeting. I guess we set up an appointment or a time to go look at the land. It looked very favorable to us, so then we set up a meeting, talked with him. We got our engineer, town engineer, Owens McCullough, involved. So Owens has put together this presentation this evening. And let me see. So the land looks really, really good, really suitable. The project is not quite the size it used to be because it isn't as large as the other parcels. As I said, it's 13 acres, and so Owens will go over that and what the constraints might be. It has I think some particular advantages, not only the access issue. It's a really, I think, good part of town for this kind of development. It abuts or connects to the lands adjacent to the Morgan Meadows. At least one of the major landowners has expressed an active interest in working with us to see if we might make a connection through his property to Morgan Meadows. So that's a real plus. It's very dry, I think, except for a little strip of land in the center, which Owens will talk about. But there's a minimal kind of wet area, but looks to be great property for the use of a community recreation center. So anyhow, that's a real brief overview. Great. Owen?
Thank you, Don.
Yeah.
Good evening. Good to see everybody again. I have a little presentation just to walk through. It has some graphics, and it'll take you through the work we looked at this 13-acre parcel. Assuming this works. So, as Don gave a pretty good description of what we were looking to do, and up here on the screen is the project location. It's from the town's tax map. It's a 13-acre parcel, quite a bit of frontage right along the North Raymond Road. The parcel, there's an aerial of it to the left. The aerial, it's agricultural field with a small strip of wooded area that coincides with a wetland, kind of right up through the center of the property. Don mentioned the Morgan Meadows property, which is the IFW conservation land, correct?
Yes, about 1,200 acres roughly.
And there's an arrow that shows from our site down to the Morgan Meadows property. You would have to go through another property to get to that land. Now there's some wetland in between, so how you would get there, we would have to map it out. We looked at the national wetland inventory maps. There's actually a pretty good wetland complex that you can actually see the blue line, which is stream that comes up through there, so we'd have to figure out how we would make a trail connection, get through that. The zoning's rural in this location. Here's some photos of the site. So the photo on the upper left side is towards the North Raymond Road, looking into the site. I call it two fields. There's kind of an open field closer to the North Raymond Road. Then there's that section of wooded area and wetland, and then there's this opening that's a connection that goes to the land out back. The photo to the right is on the back side, looking towards the residence to the northwest. And then the next photo is kind of into the site, looking back to the North Raymond Road. If you look at it, you can see the power line running along the North Raymond Road. And I took this picture. There's a rock out there. One of the things we do is we do some soil screening. We go to the Natural Resource Council soil survey and look at the soils out there. The soils out here are shallow to bedrock soils. We did see signs of whether it's rock outcrops or whether it's large boulders. It's hard to tell. Raymond is known for large boulders, but this the soil types in this area do indicate some shallow to bedrock conditions. The picture at the bottom to the right is a picture of that wooded area that we did go up. This was a very unusual year. It's not too often in December I can send my wetland scientist up and map wetlands, because usually it's snow and ice covered and you can't even identify the vegetation. There wasn't even any frost in the ground, so you could actually look at the soils and classify the soils. Emmy Irvin, who is here next to me, is an intern with our office, and she was up there with Gary. So we did map that center section as a wetland. It does fall out as a wooded wetland. I showed this picture because there's a small depressional area in it with some water in it. We should really look at that in the spring, come April, just to check for vernal pools. I don't know how familiar everybody, you probably heard me lecture about vernal pools before. I don't make these pools up, but you know, vernal pools are where you have they're seasonal breeding habitats for salamanders, blue-spotted salamanders, wood frogs, and fairy shrimp, and then there's some other species. Now, what's interesting about this site is I'm not entirely sure, even if we did find some egg masses, that it would be in April it would be a viable vernal pool. And the reason for that is where the critters come in and lay their eggs and hatch, they immediately like to go into wooded uplands, which is where their habitat is. This is all agricultural field around it. So I would be surprised, but you know, it's just something we should look at, because as I get further on, we will impact some of the wetlands as part of the development. Not a lot, but a little bit. And once I impact any wetland, I have to look at it for vernal pools, and I just simply can't tell this time of the year. Again, the features tell me that there's really no habitat around it, but I've seen a lot of strange things out there. The first photo here is a layout plan, and I'll walk you through it. So we looked at basically taking a similar program to what we had identified for the Patricia Avenue site up there. Now, one difference is I had several hundred acres of land. I have 13 acres here. Up at the other location, we had a couple of multi-purpose fields. We had a high school level baseball field and a little league baseball field. I can't fit all of that program on the site, but what I can fit is a 180 by 360 foot multi-purpose field that's basically a full-size soccer field. So you could put lacrosse, football, field hockey, all of those items within that one field. And the reason we sectioned it off, if you have youth soccer, a lot of times they'll divide the field up in thirds and they'll turn the goalposts around and they can work with it that way. I have a parking lot coming in right opposite Pond Road. Site distance is really pretty good up there. To the right of the parking lot is a small volleyball pit. Pretty simple to do, sand volleyball pit. Then coming down below the parking lot on the left-hand side, sort of the, call it the grayish brown color, that's a multi-use playground or a kid's playground that you could put swing sets, jungle gym, other sort of features into that. Next to that would be 2 tennis courts. That's the bigger blue, and then the 2 separate blue ones on the other side would be 2 basketball courts. So, and then down below that is a baseball field that would be a Little League baseball field with room for a concession stand on it. Now in this configuration, one thing I'd point out is that I've gone through these sort of layout plans. The baseball field, optimally, you want to orient, at least what everybody prefers, is to orient the baseball field so that so that home plate is facing in a northeasterly direction because of the sun. I can't do that here. I could, but it doesn't make a lot of planning sense. Now I've had people tell me, some people are very adamant about that. Others are, it's fine, it works. These are Little League players. We're not. And in fact, at one point, I actually researched the Major League Baseball fields. There was somebody had published all the orientation, and I had to laugh because they were kind of all over the map. So, for any baseball players or any baseball fans in the audience, I just thought I would mention that. So in this scenario, as you can see, I pretty much fully utilize the whole property. The next one is an alternative layout, which is a little different of a scheme. And so what I did in this case was I pushed the parking lot in a northerly direction. The volleyball pit was right next to the parking lot to the south, kind of fits in there. I put a playground at the edge of the parking lot, kind of between the baseball field and the parking lot, thinking that if somebody brings a family up to play on the playground, a parent might want to be over by the car and be able to see the kids in the playground. And then if there's a baseball game going on in a Little League, oftentimes you'll get youth baseball players playing and they'll have younger siblings. So parents, sometimes, they can be playing on the gym and somebody can be watching the baseball field. The only thing, I'm far enough away, I don't think we'll get an errant foul ball. You have to be a pretty strong kid to get it over there. But that's sort of the thinking. The other sketch did the same thing so that it was kind of in between the parking lot and the baseball in case that happens. And then I put tennis and the basketball up by the parking lot, so those are easy access off the parking lot if people want to come up and play tennis or basketball in that. Then the multi-use field then gets pushed out back on the back side. And in this case, it's really preference. The orientation of the baseball is still the same. We actually played with changing the orientation of the baseball field so that home base was more in the south with outfield going to the north. Now all of a sudden I've got home plate and people hitting right toward the playground, right? So can anybody get there? I don't know, but I didn't want to take that chance. So we actually played with a bunch of different scenarios, and there's consequences to whichever scenario you choose. Now this one tends to impact a little less wetland on the site because where you see the treed areas, I can keep more of a buffer where there's a wetland sort of to the north, and then there's a drainage swale that runs between the two fields. We would have to deal with the drainage between the two fields, and that is also a wetland. So I either impact that or put some sort of a footbridge or have a culvert, have a narrow crossing in there, but there is some wetland impact that would happen through there, but it's basically that drainage swell up through there. We're talking what they call a Tier 1 permit, which is the lowest level of permitting through the DEP. So that's about the simplest level. Some other permits I just want to talk about on this. We've sort of talked about these before, but it's always worth going over. We'll have to get a stormwater permit through the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. I won't have to get a site law permit because I don't trip that threshold, but I do trip it for a stormwater permit, which means I have to treat the runoff from the hardscaped areas, the parking lot. It might be soil filters, it might be tree boxes, rain gardens. We'll those sort of things we would sort out as we kind of work through that. An interesting thing about this piece of property, so if you're from the North Raymond Road, it slopes really in a northerly to southerly direction on that property, quite a bit actually, at least according to the USGS topography. So a couple things we want to think about when you do that. In an ideal world, I would cut a little on the upper end and fill a little on the bottom end, but I got ledge. I'm pretty confident I have ledge within, well, in some cases at or near the surface up there. So my preference would be to try to fill the land and then tear it down so that the piece to the North Raymond would have, the way that one's configured is I would slope from home plate to the outfield. Okay, there'd be a little bit of a drop to the outfield, and the parking lot would slope in that direction, but where the tennis courts are, the basketball courts, you can envision that the area closest to the road would have a little bit of fill. The area to the back might have 3 or 4 feet of fill to bring it up so that I'm not getting into the ledge. You know, some test pits would probably ultimately be good out there to see if in fact that is, but from what the soils show and what I saw with the rocks, I'm pretty confident we're going to have some ledge. So then you step back to, then as we go from the baseball field to the back, we would slope off a little bit, and then the soccer field, when you design multi-use fields, you know, the best world would be to have a uniform cross slope heading in each direction, but you can slope them at a uniform slope all the way across, which would be what I'd like to do with that particular field. I can do it a little bit differently with this one. In this scenario, the ball field would be up towards the front. You could either fill a lot on the bottom side of the ball field, or slope it in a uniform slope towards the downhill side. The baseball field would be the same. I'd slope it from home plate down. I was trying to avoid going from, if I turn it the other way, I get stuck in a situation that either I fill home plate and I go uphill to the outfield, which isn't really a good idea, hitting uphill like that to the upfield. If anything, you want a little bit of a, from the plate, you want a little bit of a slope away in the outfield. So I aligned it in the other direction, which you see there. Traffic coming in to the site. So this sketch kind of splits the difference between Dyer Road and Pond Road with a small parking lot there. The other sketch whoops, wrong one. This other sketch comes right opposite of Dyer Road. So we always have this debate in the office whether or not a project like this would generate, if you have a tournament play, you could generate a fair amount of traffic for a facility like this, but you generally wouldn't be having baseball season the same time you have soccer season. Baseball might generally be at night, but if you had a lacrosse, you might have lacrosse and baseball happening potentially at the same time. So we go back and forth with how much parking you really need. What I did was, as I said, let's say you have 2 teams playing on the baseball field, say between coaches and players. Let's say you have a roster and help 20 people on, so that's 40 on each team. And then I took a factor, I don't remember exactly what it was, on how many might be driving and getting dropped off. If they're youth kids, they better not be driving. I hope not. So, you know, that lowers the amount of kids, so it'd be parents dropping them off. So, you know, the parking in there gets us, I think, gives us pretty good parking in there. You know, if this was high school, you know, a high school baseball field, that might be a little different. And of course, tournament play is a little different, but I think you won't see huge amounts of traffic, because this field's set up more for youth type activities, and then tennis and basketball, which people come and go at any time during the day. And then the soccer field, you know, it is a full soccer field. You could have organized games on it. So I don't know, you know, you have to, and Beth is here, so, you know, Brenda, so, you know, you can speak more to your program than I certainly can. But anyway, that's the idea behind it. So let's talk about the cost of it. And I know this is pretty hard to read, but one of the goals I think we still have on this is, if this goes forward, it would be designed, permitted, all that in place, so that in 2017 we could tap into the last year of the IRT program, I think is the direction we're going, if we can get into that. We've already submitted for, when Danielle Loring was here, there was a submittal that was actually still pending for the Patricia Avenue ball fields, and I would probably make contact on to see if we could swap these and keep it in the program. I don't necessarily think they care which site they go to, as long as it's programmed. So the advantage, and for those folks that may not remember, the IRT is a program that the U.S. military does. I think it goes back to the Clinton administration. And what they did was, the National Guard each year does training for their troops, and they set up a program where this training, where the Guard supplies the manpower, the equipment, the fuel, the logistics, and they move in. An example was last year here, there was several hundreds of military soldiers rotating in and out of Camp Hines, from Marines, the Navy, to Army, and they came all summer long for about 3.5 months. And they paid for it. They rented all the bulldozers, excavators, dump trucks, equipment to actually do all of the construction for these projects. The community has to provide the materials and the permits. So if there's fill that comes in, we've got to provide the fill. At least have a source for the fill that the Guard will go get it if they have the right dump trucks. The Guard tends to show up with interesting equipment sometimes.
Just waiting for that one.
Yeah, they had this big dump truck when we were doing the tower project last year. They showed up with this, these wheels were almost as tall as a ceiling, and the guy said, well, it'll go over any mountain, any sand dune, anything that you can throw at us, but it only holds 2 yards of material at a time. So, you know, Nathan ended up helping us a little with that.
I said when I saw it, it looks fairly new, and he says, well, I don't know. And he looks down the odometer. I guess it is. It has 121 miles on it.
Yeah, there you go.
Hauled it all the way from Michigan.
But I found them to be very, very cooperative, very good to work with. When we did the tower project, they rented the cranes, the lifts. They had all sorts of skill sets. People, you know, these are National Guard folks that have regular jobs other times of the year. Some of them were excavator operators. Some of them were dozer operators, some of them were surveyors, some of them were engineers. We had a full-fledged structural engineer working on one of them. We had electricians, plumbers, everything. It was very good with the resources we had. So what would happen is the town would provide loam, seed, fill materials. They would have to pay for the paving that would go down on the parking lots. The Guard doesn't have paving capabilities, but the Guard would install fencing. The town provides the materials, the Guard would install it. If you had a concession stand, you buy the materials, they would build the stand. The back posts, the supports, all of that would be done by the Guard. And the biggest advantage is the land grading and the contouring, because the town would not be investing in any of those costs. Now, that being said, it's still an investment by the town to build this, and you know, this is based on a concept sketch plan. We know generally how much it costs to build a baseball field. We know generally how much it costs to build a soccer field, and I had to make some assumptions on how much cut and fill would be involved in the site. I did include a budgeting for lighting and some bleachers and other things into the fields. Lighting's pretty expensive. The guard could install the lighting, run all the conduit, the electrical, but you still have to buy the concrete, the posts, the light fixtures, the controllers. They would put it all together, but you have to buy the materials for it. So there are some options here. I think I also carried an allowance in there for, I think I carried irrigation in there. I may not
Yes.
have. I did have irrigation
Yes.
in there. Irrigation is another item that can be fairly expensive. I did a similar project to this for the town of Gorham over at the Little Falls Rec. And actually, the Public Works Department built that this past year with the under drainage and the irrigation. They did put irrigation in, but they got a local vendor, a company called Thirsty Turf, who actually donated all of the irrigation system. But an irrigation system is about $4 a square foot to install. The other thing we have on the site is we have no public water and no public sewer, so I carried an allowance in there for a drilled well and an allowance for a septic system, should we want to put one in if you have a concession, and public bathrooms. I'll tell you that public bathrooms are people have love-hate relationships with those because somebody's got to maintain these. They get abused quite frequently if somebody isn't in there. A lot of people opt to use the porta-johns out there and have a contract when they come in and remove them and just not deal with the bathroom situation. So that's certainly, if you did away with that, you probably wouldn't need a septic system at all. You could do a well for an irrigation system, is basically what the well would be for. So I wanted to talk about process. Should the town decide to go forward with this, I gave some thought to kind of timing of this. The feasibility planning we're doing now, that's what tonight is. If the town did decide to go forward with this, the first things that would have to happen would be some regulatory coordination, obviously some discussions with the landowners to make sure that this all fits in and works. We would need to coordinate with the IRT. I would need to get a hold of those folks to see about substituting this in for that program. And it's worth doing. If they say no, then that's a different discussion with the town. But we would want to do that early to get that in because they're right now doing all their planning for the 2016 because they're mobilizing again for 2016 and they have one more year, 2017 after that. So we want to make sure we get in early. We really have to have everything in almost a year in advance. So I would track down who we need to and get this information into them. And then I would say before we start survey and any sort of preliminary engineering, because we have time when May comes along, I would like to go out there and have me and Gary look at those ponded areas for vernal pools. Again, I'm not sure that they're an issue, but we do need to look at that. And then I would start some general regulatory coordination. And if all that looks good, then I would say we would jump into the permitting and the design, which would be sometime between May and October of 2016. So in theory, it would probably be pretty much all permitted, designed, ready to go by October of 2016. That information all gets transferred to the Guard because the Guard does a lot of their planning over the winter for that next summer. I attended a number of coordination meetings up at Camp Hines last winter, and they spend a lot of time figuring out the logistics of what they need and equipment and how they're going to do that. So that would be good timing at the end of 2016 to have that ready for them. This goes probably without saying until you have all the permits in hand and you know all the logistics are planned out. You may or may not want to acquire the land until you hate the, I don't know, I work with too many private developers that you don't generally acquire the land till all your permits are in place and you're ready to go. You'll tie it up with maybe a purchase sale or some sort of an agreement. And if all that goes well, we'd be looking at construction between May and October in 2017. And with that, if there's questions. I've talked enough.
I'm sure there are. Questions?
Yeah.
Joe?
One thing you left off on the whole planning thing is whether the town wants it or not.
That's their decision.
I
Yeah,
mean,
no.
this is a huge project. This is a, more than likely $2 million bond that would have to come out from the taxpayers. So, you may proceed with all that other stuff, but if the town says no,
Oh,
I'll
give you my report and I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so somewhere in there, soon, the town needs to
Yeah.
decide. It's,
It would be town meeting, so you wouldn't know until May or June.
Okay, so if that happened, that still is actually okay timing, because I need 5 months, 5 to 6 months to design and permit the project, and have it ready for the garden in the fall. But if, say, the town, at the town, you said, town meeting's May, right, or is it June?
June.
June.
Early June.
So the only thing that would be time, for me, out of all this tonight, I walk away, the only thing that would be time sensitive would be that short period of window, which is just a few hours for them to come up and look at the vernal pools and make sure that there's not an issue with that.
That and part of the feasibility of talking to the IRT folks, because
Yeah.
if they say, no, you can't substitute, we can stop.
Yep,
Right, I mean, they're more than $1 million of this,
sure they are, yeah.
based on your first estimates. This would also give us a chance to look at, with the rec folks, lighting, irrigation, talk to the, that's been farm field for years and years. So hopefully we can keep some of the topsoil and reuse it. But if, is it full irrigation or is it, do you have a well and somebody has to go out there and move the sprinklers from time to time?
The budget that I put in there was full irrigation.
Right.
So that would be a pump pit, it would be piping through the system. The interesting about fields, the best fields are fields that have a pretty good sand layer and topsoil, they drain real fast, so that they've got a good playable surface, but the downside of that is you really have to irrigate them to keep them green.
So that's part of, part of
That's part of all of
feasibility
that,
as we,
yeah.
as we go forward and decide, how much. I don't think we have irrigation on any of our current stuff. So if you put in a decent amount of loam and possibly some long hose irrigation.
are you talking a full gravel infield and then outfield grass, or are you talking grass on the infield?
Gravel, no, this would be a regular baseball field with a gravel infield, grassed outfield, the fencing for the backstop and along the foul lines, and then some dugouts.
So your irrigation's for the outfield?
Oh, yeah, for the outfield. Oh, yeah. No, I'm not gonna irrigate the
Right.
infield.
Yeah.
The
But
soccer field.
the timeframe seems, I think you need a decision on this sooner, because how much are you gonna spend on engineering this thing for the next few months? And the town comes along and goes, I'm sorry.
So the way I would see it is very little in engineering for the next few months. Basically, alls I would do over the next few months is talk to the IRT program to see if we can make the swap. And in April, I would send Emmy and and Gary up to look at for vernal pools. And that's all I would do between now and then, besides provide you with any updates to the plans or anything that, working with the town. I would not do any surveying, hard engineering, or permitting until after we know the IRT is on board, the town can get the money in place, because for me to go through and spend a lot of money engineering and designing this thing, and then,
So-
Joe would be mad at me.
Yeah, right, I would.
Yes, Joe.
One other question on
Yeah,
this,
it was
on this Tim Davison. What, is it a donation of land, or
No,
is it a
it's-
purchase of land?
Neither.
Okay.
It's what's been characterized as a no-cost lease. As
Like
in
a
he's,
99-year lease?
well, it's subject to negotiation. So far, we've talked, I proposed after talking to Mike, proposed 50, and he's on for 25, it sounds like, but that's something that would be, need to be negotiated with renewals, so we haven't negotiated that yet, but it's not a ownership, not a fee interest for sure, it would be a lease. He's not interested in selling. A no-cost lease, and I assume the lease, when I say no cost, I think it's reasonable to expect that you'd have some sort of a lease agreement that would cover the cost of taxes, which I think is $800 odd at this point, but obviously that's subject to change moving forward, but.
I would want more than a 25-year lease if I'm
Absolutely.
investing.
Correct.
I was just gonna ask Joe's next question, is
That's
what
correct.
happens after that 25 years
Well,
with all the
you
money?
have, it'll be
that-
subject to
yeah.
renewal, but
Lease.
we haven't negotiated that. I mean, I tell you what I asked and then what the response was so far. There's no definitive answer on that yet.
And I think, the next step would be, we have now a plan. We go back and sit and talk about the practicality of that as part of what the town does between now and town meeting, is to make sure that we have a viable agreement going forward.
Have we talked to the neighbors at all,
Yes.
and the reaction?
Well, the
Right there,
reaction,
you can get it.
we have one neighbor who's extremely enthusiastic. We have another neighbor who I think was pretty enthusiastic. And then we have a third neighbor who we didn't really get a readout on, but only because we weren't talking to the right person, I guess.
Right.
And so we haven't, and I'm not, I mean, it's way too early to gauge the neighbors and to ask them for an opinion. I mean, we're all in the learning curve, the beginning stages of this, but we haven't met people who've said, geez, that's a terrible idea yet.
How many houses are down Dyer Road?
Only 2?
I think so. Our house is the White House.
That
The big
sound
one right
dire?
there?
Yeah, we're lot 28 here, the abutter, the flanks, the majority. of your project.
Are you the picture, the house that was the picture of?
The house under 2
That
basketball
will
courts?
impact us
Right.
quite a bit.
Are you under 2 basketball courts there, that house?
That's quite a bit.
I mean, especially if you put lights up.
Well, that was
Yeah.
one of the concerns that you had was,
Yeah.
I believe, when you talked to Chris, that lights were one of the issues for
I
you.
want to thank Chris, this gentleman's Chris over here.
Yes.
Thank you for calling me and inviting us. Obviously, we're a little late to the discussion. However, in the course of our conversation, you suggested
Hey, hang
there
on,
weren't any
Greg.
plans at
Greg.
that time.
We gotta
Hey,
get you a
Bill, you
mic.
got a mic?
Oh, I don't have a mic.
No, Bill should have one for you. There you go.
You gotta say who you are too.
Yeah,
Hello. Am I on?
I think you are. You can
Yeah,
sing.
I'm Greg Mayer, my wife Rhonda, my son Sam. We live on lot 28, which is the abutter to this project on the north side, northwest side. And Chris invited me to this meeting tonight. As usual, I'm a little late to the party.
You're not, this is the first
You
for
just
everybody.
In our
Yeah.
discussion, in my discussion with Chris, he said there were no plans in existence at that time, and obviously this is the presentation of that plan, so I'm not suggesting that you misrepresented it. However, it's quite more elaborate than I anticipated. We discussed maybe something as minimal as a couple of parking spots and maybe trail access to the back property across the Pecoraro's land and down to Moose Meadow. But I'm a little taken by the size of this project and not ready to, or prepared fully to say that I would wholly want to see this project where it affects me so greatly on my property in its size, with lighting at nighttime. We're talking about a large use area for a number of people. I was thinking, much smaller was what was being discussed. I'm thinking about things like the lighting, additional police protection at nighttime in these areas, party spots, some sort of berm or fencing that would separate my property from that. The amount of fill, I'm very familiar with the property, the amount of fill that it would take to bring that all up to grade how does it affect drainage down toward my property and any swales or, so again, I'm just taken by the size of it and the scope of it and anxious to let the discussion proceed here, but I definitely have some concerns about project as it exists presently.
The size is definitely smaller than what we started out with on like Patricia Avenue and Egypt Road and stuff like that too. But I can see it from, yeah, your point from
Yeah.
being.
Don?
Yeah, I'd just still like to express my apologies. We did our best to, or I was there with Chris when he tried to explain it to you, but I think because this is happening so quickly, the opportunity came up, we're racing against the IRT deadlines. And so literally this didn't exist when we talked to you. Owens has put the afterburners on, got this done. And, you know, we probably, because we've been doing this for so long on so many different sites, probably failed, definitely failed in getting into all the details that on those other sites. And so my apologies, but this is
And
a smaller.
I would echo that. I had not seen that at all.
Yeah, this is all new. This is all new.
Hadn't seen a plan.
Right.
Well, you're in the loop now for the rest of the,
My point of
Discussion.
contacting you was so that you could be in the loop as soon as we were.
yeah.
This is the beginning of the loop, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it affects us greatly, if there were lights in
Yeah.
that field at night. The limitation to time at night that those lights could be on
Yeah.
and
And I would
Yeah.
say as his wife, the traffic too, because I walk on that road, there's hardly any shoulders and things too. And what are we addressing as far as traffic and any additional traffic? Back when our kids went to school too, that road has been, it's like a major highway, cars going 50, 60 miles an hour. And there hasn't been a whole lot of improvement in the 20 years almost that we've lived here to make it better for, you know, kids waiting for buses or walkers or people that want to recreate too.
Is the south side of that property the new farm stand they just put in?
Yes, and so Mr. Pecoraro, and I'm not sure he's here.
No, he's not here
He said he might come, but he was the person who was, you know, extremely enthusiastic about the opportunity to work with us to gain access to the Morgan Meadow Preserve. So once again, though, he hasn't seen, like you, hasn't seen the details, so maybe when he sees the details, that could change. But we just made the outreach calls, not having this to show or to talk about, and so that you could be invited here. And so we did the same thing with him and with the other neighbor.
sure.
Joe, the new farm stand would be, excuse me, to the right,
Yeah, on the south side.
Yeah.
but it would be a couple properties down, correct?
Maybe a few properties.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a few properties down.
So whose property is that right there, just beyond the trees?
Newquist.
And that was the one that we didn't get to the right person, so I don't know where we're at on that
Well,
one.
I thought Brenda was gonna try to contact them.
Wasn't able to, okay, so we tried to reach out to them.
Brenda, would you mind introducing yourself and going up to the mic and, please? I want to ask you a question.
Oh, gosh. Yes, I'm Brenda Cowett. Go
Hi,
ahead
Brenda.
with your question.
And who are you, other than Brenda Collette?
I basically got involved because I do the directing of the UCAN race. And over the years, we've raised almost $19,000 from the UCAN. And this all started when we tried to put a basketball court down at Mill Street, which is quite the bogland. And we had basically come to the conclusion that we're looking into some options of the basketball court, and then during one of the meetings to talk about the basketball court and spending the money from the UCAN, it came up as a viable option of looking into what Timmy Davison had offered years ago.
You recently helped with new playground equipment down at Mill Street.
Well, we removed the castle, and I know that there is another structure down there that is unsafe and is coming down. And we are having a phase project with the UCAN, whereas the basketball court was going to be the first phase, and then we wanted to do our second phase of playground equipment that would replace some of the ones that was removed out back at Mill Street.
I don't know from a baseball standpoint how much we use the lights at the current baseball
They've never
field
been on.
that I know of, right?
No.
It was never, when I was coaching there, I've never seen them on. So that may or may not be viable. I believe that Owens put everything on a possible wish list. But again, this is our first look at it too. Part of what I would love to see is, youth baseball, folks involved with the playground, basketball, tennis, soccer, get together and and work on a wish list of what's practical. I would like to see the town's commitment down closer to 1.2 million in this, because we have a bond that we're retiring that is approximately that scope in 2017. So I would like to see, if we go ahead with this, that it does not impact our mill rate as part of the design. So that may take out things like lights, irrigation, to get us down to that number, and only be for daytime use. I as a, this is not a very big town, to have lights and have to pay for lights and have to pay for some of those other things. Do we really need that? And what is basically designed as a youth recreational field as opposed to an older kid recreational facility. So I wouldn't want to see lights at the basketball court for noise, personally, or the tennis courts. We have lost the ability of our tennis courts, which are down near the Mill Street facility. I know that they were on private land, and we don't currently have the ability to use those. So this would get us a basketball court, replace the tennis courts that we used to have. But I could easily see this be a daytime only, sun up, sundown type of park, which is I think what we were proposing for the Patricia Avenue when we were doing those talks, because we were talking about actually shutting the gate to the facility from sun up to sundown, and having that be, somebody's job. So I can see that logic traveled over to this, especially from a cost standpoint on lights alone. Don?
I would tell you from experience, I know what you're saying about the bathroom facility and all that jazz, but this is a Porta-John town. I think we have them everywhere. We're kind of cornered the market on them, if you will. And but having been in towns where we have designed and tried to maintain such things, it's a huge expense, a constant nightmare for maintenance. So I would advocate for that temporary, serviced kind of facility versus a permanent bathroom facility. And as far as irrigation is super nice. Every town I've ever worked for wanted it and didn't achieve it. So,
But Owen, if we had a centrally located well with a decent pump house, maybe we put in a well house with a 500-gallon holding tank, so that you could go out there and put a pump that would give you a nice, and if Public Works had to do it, during drought situation or something, we might be able to, then you can drain that tank in the winter.
Yeah.
That plastic holding tank, and if you,
Sure.
Something which would be, I think, a less expensive possible way to do it if we needed to. And also on the baseball field, permanent outfield fence or removable outfield fence so that we could use it for soccer or for other things.
Well, I have in there 4-foot chain link fence for a permanent. That's an interesting question, because what I've seen too is if you don't do a permanent fence, sometimes people will combine the soccer, the play fields with the outfields. They're kind of dual purpose, but the only difficulty with that is that if you basically restrict the use, you can only use one at a time, right? Because if you're playing baseball, somebody can't be down using the other field.
But if we had a fence for baseball season that we could put in a
Oh, like a
shed,
snow fence or something? Sure.
some sort of a temporary fencing, that then it could be used. The other reason I say this, dog owners see a fenced-in area and it's available year-round, it becomes
Yeah.
a dog park. I know that's one of Lonnie's biggest complaints about the fields down there, and if we only have the fence for baseball season, I
You
don't.
do that, then you got snowmobilers going up there tearing the fields all up that you have to fix later on because they're up there four-wheeling or whatever else. The other thing too, the light situation, and anybody that's been involved in baseball that has to go down there and clean up from the night before in the dugouts and everything else, I'd at least maybe want 1-2 lights just somewhere parking-wise, just so you can see.
Right,
Yeah.
security lights versus
Exactly,
plate
because
lights.
of
Yes.
the party situation that we do have down on Mill Street every so
No, I don't
often.
disagree with that. Yeah.
So,
How big is that baseball field?
About 2 acres.
But how many feet?
200, I think it's 180 or 200. I think it's 200
Which is a little
feet.
league size
really, it
field.
would be
Right,
minor
Little League.
leagues type thing,
Uh,
Kevin?
Be the size of what we have at
I
Mill
have to look
Street.
it up, it's designed around
Yeah.
the Little League. I heard somebody here, was it 200?
200 feet for
200,
Little League,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Cause if I did full baseball field, I think it's 400.
Well, I mean, we're not the major leagues here.
Yeah, no, that's, I'd be like high school.
Some of us would like to try
Yeah.
out, you know, live our youth again, but
Are there other folks from the public that would like to speak on this issue or ask questions while we have Owens here and we're starting to gather information?
I have a few more comments, I mean, but I don't want to take away from anybody else's opportunity to speak.
No, go for it.
That's why we're here.
So, again, the size of it and the scope of it is a surprise to me, but I'm not immediately opposed to it. I'm not saying that I am. However, I am a little more opposed to the back section, the field, the soccer field as proposed there. I think maybe that could be left a little more natural and just a trailhead or something like that. Just keep the one field concept. And I don't get involved in town meetings or most of the business, and probably should, so I'm not trying to make a cop out here. But to look at this project here, I'm struck by a couple of things, comments that maybe are appropriate at a different time, but for instance, we've got a beautiful beach over on 302 in Raymond that we can't seem to even afford to keep people there to clean the beach. It's an ongoing issue. Why would we be considering something of this expense, and who's going to clean this as a normal course of business? Seems to me we ought to focus on the assets that we already have. I have a hard time imagining the townspeople approving the scope of this whole thing. And one comment that you made, Michael, was with regard to a bond that is about to retire, and that we could use those funds, and then with no increase in the mill rate, so no effect on the mill rate. Well, isn't it true if we don't do a project like this, then maybe the mill rate could go down, and that's an effect on the mill rate? Just ideas that may be suited for a different meeting than this one. But I'm not totally opposed to it. I don't see how it's a huge detriment to my property. But those are my concerns, obviously. This is directly in my backyard, and it affects us greatly. And I want to take some time to absorb it and think about it and return with other questions and concerns, particularly with what would be done with the division between my property and the field.
Is it currently open field between the two?
It is.
Yes.
And do they hay
Probably one.
one field, so they hay right into your backyard, or do they?
It was bush hogged. I wouldn't really call it hay, but it was
Okay.
bush hogged this past year, with maybe in contemplation of some of this happening. In fact, they bush hogged quite a ways onto my property, probably not knowing exactly where the property line is, and I mean, again, it only improved it, so I wasn't gonna go over and say, hey, what are you doing? But,
And the safety issue too, I mean, there are a lot of pluses, but also too, as, like feeling really safe, to see the magnitude of people you wouldn't know in your backyard. It's horrible to think of.
I
Like
think-
you mentioned, why on Mill Street, then, is that fully utilized? If you're talking about, you're taking down playground, Mill Street, the problem with the lights there, again, I guess the question I have is why are you gonna now create another place where there's, are there
It's still
problems on
being
Mill
used.
Street?
yeah,
No?
Mill Street's being used
Oh, it's being used,
Yeah.
and fairly
a lot.
safe.
Just
for-
not enough
yeah.
room, and they have to coordinate between the school up here. The school goes first as far as using the fields up here and being able to get more fields for the kids is what it is. And I know they play soccer now on Agawam, I think still.
Yeah.
And another thought that occurs to me too is that I prefer to, whatever plan is agreed upon, that it is kind of brought to fruition and that we're not under construction there for, the next 10 years as it sort of evolves and fields are added and, ongoing construction site there. I'd rather see a project approved in its entirety, whether it's with lights or not, however it's going to go forward and move forward with the plan and kind of an expected completion date rather than lingering on and evolving over time.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe?
Oh, and is there a way to buffer those landowners with trees? You mentioned the berm.
Yeah,
I mean, how do you soundproof it? You know, the
I'll be
trees
honest,
soundproof it?
noise, even with a wooden buffer, you're not gonna, depends on atmospheric conditions a lot too. On how heavy air versus, high humidity versus non-humidity. It's amazing how that affects the acousticals of noise traveling. But for where they're at, if somebody's out, people are lined up playing soccer or baseball, whether it's there or on the other sketch or up there, you're going to hear background noise of kids running and
Yes, yes,
fans.
yeah.
That's just the nature of it. And they, you could even hear at that distance. Even if I put trees, I can try to break it up, break the visual barrier up if I had some buffering, but the noise from even basketball or tennis, you'll get some carryover. It's just I can't completely block it.
From a sound standpoint, but we could give some privacy.
Oh yeah,
We
up
can
there
definitely help create privacy
Yeah.
for the neighbors from there, so that, soccer players aren't looking in backyard kind of thing as a straight open field sightline.
If I was gonna buffer along here, my recommendation, the best buffering for these folks would be some sort of not white pines, but some sort of a coniferous buffer that would be like a fir buffer that doesn't lose its leaves during during the fall time and the springtime when people are using those fields. That buffer comes up through there, and that tends to be a denser buffer, because if I do white pines or I do deciduous trees, what happens is you get stems, you get tree up high, you don't get blockage down below. And I think in this case, a physical buffer would be as appropriate as anything. Berming, we'd have to look at the contours, how we could grade some berms, and maybe we could do some berming with a tree buffer on top of it. I can tell you I've had mixed results with berms. Berms look like berms. I don't know how else to say it. Whereas if I plant coniferous trees up and down the property line, that looks a little more natural. So if you picture yourself, in a location where you got houses next to each other, picture a berm and a house and a berm, as opposed to some trees for more natural. But we can fit just about. We could probably do a little of both if that would be the preference.
So, Owen, I know this is out of your territory. Looking at your budget, you don't include maintenance.
No.
So, Don, maintenance on a property like this?
Well, maintenance on a property like this done by the town is a significant, undertaking. As was pointed out, this town relies largely on the goodwill of volunteers, and that's how a lot of our properties are. How we're certainly assisted to a great degree by volunteers. But I would say that we need to come up with a budget and a plan and a program, and not relying on that for this facility. And I do not have that this evening, but we'll have to develop that. And
Who maintains Mill Street right now?
well, we have town, and we also volunteer effort together. We have both, and
We mow it, correct?
well, the volunteers mow it as well, as I understand it. So it depends. I mean, if it needs additional mowings, the volunteers have mowed it as well. So this is different. This is something we haven't done. And I mean, the point is well taken about Raymond Beach. Raymond Beach is a difficult spot, though. Even if we had full-time dedicated maintenance there, I'm not sure we could stay ahead of it in the peak season, because it's an open site that's free for anybody. The only free beach I know about on Sebago Lake, and so it gets inundated with use, and so that's a tough situation. Tasseltop, on the other hand, which is managed by the town actively, is a whole different ballgame, so to speak, and it's very, very well maintained, and so
Well, that's, we're able to charge for Tasseltop.
we're able to charge for
We can't
Tasseltop.
charge
But
for
this is different, something that we haven't ventured into at this level, And so I say you have to develop a comprehensive budget and a plan, and we would do that, and the town would have to commit to fund it. What it is, I can't tell you tonight, but it's not nothing, but it's also not something that's gonna be so overwhelming that it would bust our budget, that's for sure. It's very typical for towns to have facilities of this type that they maintain.
So Mike, this is your baby sort of thing, right?
Don and I have
Yep.
been pushing this for 4 years, 5 years, as
Yeah.
we've looked at
Wow.
sites,
Remember the
absolutely.
strike three thing? He's gone for 4.
Yeah.
There was a pass ball, Teresa, on strike 3, there was a pass ball, I got one more shot.
Okay, there you go.
He's on his way to first base. So you're thinking if IRT does not come through, this is not
Correct,
happening?
correct.
See, I don't see IRT not coming through, only because they're looking for work, and it's just kind of switching off a project, is I think the way I'm looking at it.
I hope.
I mean,
Yeah.
Joe, just to follow up on that, Joe, when we were looking at Patricia Avenue and building the road, you know, we were 90% there with the landowners for building the road. You know, I think we could have got it done. But when Owens really went and looked at the cost of the road, I mean, the road itself was a couple $1,000,000 to go to a rec facility. It was gonna be a $5 million project all in. I didn't see this town at town meeting approving a $2.5 million bond to build that. And
Well, I mean, you're looking at over $1 million for this one.
this one, I think we could be in the 1.2 to 1.4 range. The debt that's being retired is 1.1. So the debt service that, when we then go out for a bond at the rates we've been able to get it compared to the bond that we're paying off now, it would be close to a wash, the way I look at it, not counting maintenance. And that has been my goal since the beginning, has been to do a project that was as revenue or as cost neutral as we could for the town, if we were gonna do it, and bring that to town meeting. That has been my goal. Don?
A few points. Can I go backwards a little bit on the whole issue? I've done one of these very similar, a little bit larger, but the exact concerns that you expressed about the noise and buffering and all that, I would tell you, forget berms. It's all about, buffers with trees. And so we did that. The people were very, very concerned about the noise. And it's not to say there won't be noise. I'll tell you right now, there's gonna be noise when it's in use. But the good news is it's not in constant use. It's in use when there are ball games. It's in use, when activities are going on. The lesser uses like basketball and tennis are not typically noisy like a baseball or youth soccer game would be. But what happened was the people were very concerned, and then after the facility was built, it became something that was utilized very heavily by the residential neighborhood that was adjacent to. Now it's different than this situation. Every situation is different. More densely built place and more concerns. But now it's seen as a great amenity, and people walk through their properties to the facility and use it. I assume they use it off hours even when the gates are closed. So it's become something that's really, considered to be a really good thing. Now on the IRT, there's no guarantee, absolutely no guarantee on the IRT. We're in competition now with both Standish and Casco. They're both building facilities, rec facilities, and so they both applied. Casco for something I think similar to this, Standish for some sort of a beach project. So we're competing with them. We do have, the only hope we have is that we have an application in for Patricia Avenue. And so if that can happen as a flip, then maybe we're still in the running. I don't know that. I think that's a job one to find that out. And I guess my final thing I would say about it is, it's a big nut for the town, but it's not unusual for a town of this size to have something like this. It's an investment in the community. It's an investment in the future. It's an investment for future families. And I think it makes the town a more attractive town to live in. And also I've heard some favorable comment about the idea that this part of town is a great location for it because it's better suited and that a lot of people I guess don't even know this part of town is part of Raymond, but it would also be an opportunity for people to discover a little bit of Raymond that outside of the more typical areas along the 302 corridor that people associate with us. But anyway, I have been an advocate, unabashed, I guess, but ultimately I think it's the town meeting. Do the people want this? So the question is, do you have the desire to form it up, assuming the IRT works, and take it to the people?
Anybody else?
Or not.
Questions? Last comments before I Want to close this out and
I
thank?
guess one concern I have is,
You want to introduce yourself?
Oh,
And
yeah.
take the mic and.
I'm Sam there. One concern I have as a young Raider is the lease agreement. That kind of scares me a little bit, is spending all this money, and then what about like 10 or 20 years down the road, this falls through? It seems like a lot of money to base on a bunch of unknowns. I mean, he could pull a deal at 25 years, and then we have to sit with a field that's no longer in use, and all the money is pretty much wasted, in my point. I guess I just would like to see a longer agreement. I mean, it seems like a lot of money to go for a short period of time. You'd want to be, if you're going to invest, you'd want to do long term.
Without a guarantee.
That's still a
Agree.
negotiation, so we
But
all
that-
feel
that-
the same way.
Sure.
That's
It's
another
long
big
and
factor,
possible.
yeah.
Yeah.
Long and possible.
It's-
I would want to see a minimum, I mean, the trees that you spoke of, it, like a white vinyl fence along our line, something for the order of pine land or something like that. But, you know, at the edge of the baseball diamond there, and I don't know what the scale is exactly there, but if the North Raymond Road is 50 feet wide, then the north corner of that baseball diamond next to my property is what, 40 feet
About
or
40
less?
feet.
40 feet, and I guess that is consistent with setbacks. But would there be a fence around that end of the field? Would that have like a chain link fence,
He-
or what
he-
keeps
Yeah,
the ball in?
he put one,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
he has
had
one
one
up
in,
for a
but-
chain link.
And then people, spectators would stand around the back side of that field, I assume, to watch the game. I'd want to see something, at minimum, a fence included in the plan, and the trees for a buffer to, protect our interests there. But other than that, I'm not immediately opposed to it. We're here with open minds to look at it, but we are very much impacted by it. That's all I have to add at this time, really.
The big thing is seeing what the public, I think, wants to do as far as moving forward. I think that wouldn't that be like our next big step, just because, I mean, and then negotiating the lease deal too.
That, and I think getting baseball and soccer together and having a conversation on playground needs and things of that nature by the folks who are designing current playgrounds. I mean, I think that's where we need public input. If there's no interest by those groups, right, Don and I can sit here all day long and talk about it, and it's going nowhere. Unless, those groups are interested, and that you're not gonna get a vote at town meeting, so.
I think this plan has a lot more A through Z that you've put out there compared to what the other ones have. I mean, we were looking on landfills before, we were looking at the traffic studies on 302, going back through different people's properties as far as trying to get out on 302. But I'm also not living over there too, so, I understand that. And my big thing is, it does, and I said this to Don, it kind of brings North Raymond into Southern Raymond, do you know what I mean, and together as far as,
Don't disagree, we're in
you
favor
know,
of that.
yeah,
See that
but,
as a positive, which
Right.
in many aspects is a positive, but, you could foresee parking on the Dyer Road is sort of a given, that when the parking lot is full, people are gonna park along the side of the Dyer Road. There's a ditch down the side of that road that I pulled numerous people out of over the years, so.
well, one big
So,
issue,
maybe widening it up that area, allowing for some anticipation of some parking, or at least considering it, or some no parking signs and some patrol of it, just to make sure that it isn't occurring.
one big issue I do have, and it is an issue that's been ongoing in this town, North Raymond Road, if you've got people that are gonna be traveling that road, something has got to be done with that intersection. Cause right down the road from there is that bad intersection that you have at,
Ledge Hill.
Yeah,
Ledge Hill. And people are gonna be flying up and down there, not thinking that they're gonna get to a game, they're gonna be coming off of there, and it is maybe a mile down, I think. I
It
don't
is,
think it's
yeah.
much more than that, but that
Yeah.
is definitely a big concern of mine, because that's been something we've been talking about, changing the stop signs, moving people back, and if people are.
Which a lot of those things have been
Yeah,
done.
they've been done
We-
already.
We've done
We call that
those.
the North Raymond Turnpike.
Well, yeah,
From the Edwards Farm down to
Yeah.
the Four Corners there.
but people coming
There's a long
from,
straightaway.
Right.
right, but people coming from somewhere else, like Hasco or whatever, to play there, that is an issue, that corner,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, you're gonna need to change some of the speed limits
Yeah.
hopefully, working with DOT. Because right now, people do 50, 60 miles an hour on that road.
And many of us that wanna walk and things
Yeah.
too, like I
Yeah.
like to walk, and you're taking your life in your hands to try to walk. And so now if you have kids parking, I mean, our families parking, like you said, on the Dyer Road or the North Raymond Road are trying to get in, that's kind of a bad hill going up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all part of what we
It's
have
gonna
to do
change
for
the entire
sight
character
lines.
of that area.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's good hearing this now. This is all the first meeting as far as getting it out.
So your next step is, I don't think you can move until you hear about the IRT.
Yeah, I will be following, that's my next step is that if this
How
is-
long of a time?
They don't give you a quick answer either.
No, it should take, this should be a fairly easy to get an answer
I
on.
just gotta go back through and get to the right person. There was a number of contacts, so I've just gotta sift through that, get to the right person, and then make some phone calls, provide this information, and hopefully I can get something pretty quickly out
Yeah,
of it.
well, I'll help you with that, and,
Because I'm thinking you're gonna need a public hearing
oh, yeah,
before you
yeah.
even go to
Yeah.
town
Oh,
meeting.
yeah.
Well, I think the issues here, I mean, that's a fundamental issue, we gotta get right on that. I think the issue, and you make a great point about the lease, and that's a great concern, and the investment versus the 25 years. A little known fact here, and it is slightly different because it's state-owned and leased back to the town, but both Tasseltop and Raymond Beach are deals where the town has, I think, 20-year leases, if you will, 20-year agreement with, renewals for 100 years in those two cases. So I think to get a lease that can work for Mr. Davison, can work for the town, that's a huge challenge, something we've got to do, as you point out, Joe, to get this ready and to get the approvals at town meeting. So, and Mike referenced, is there a groundswell of support? Do the recreation people, do they want to see this happen? I believe they do, and I've heard that over and over again. But are there people who are going to organize and want to see this happen? And then, is the town going to support it? So it's a step-by-step progression. I mean, we could be, like we were with Patricia Avenue, we could be all out if we get a negative at any of these junctures. And so first juncture, IRT, yes or no? A no, we're done. Yes, we keep going. We look at the lease. Can we come up with a lease that works for everybody? That's going to be a tough task. And then yes or no, does that work? And then we get to the whole issue of can we get the timing right and get the approvals we need for the town meeting and get on to do this. And so there's steps that need to be done. And so the question is, do you want to explore this?
So we found out about this
I get an email that they said they can't hear online.
online.
Yeah.
That was quite a while ago.
That was, yeah, I just checked that. The email started, it was like an hour ago, but I didn't know if you had seen it. So that was why Kevin was here.
We're good to go now.
Okay, cool, thanks.
So we literally found out about this November, maybe? So this has all happened since November, over the holidays, and we're excited that I could get it to this stage, or I'm excited that I could get it to this stage for January, so that we can also have these discussions during the budget season, so that we are doing the due diligence we need to, that was brought up here for the ongoing maintenance, pickup, finding out from, folks, what do we have to add to the design. So I'm hoping that we have enough time. We may not. I mean, that could be one of the check marks, that we don't have enough time to do what we need to do to take advantage of the IRT. As you saw in the budget, I mean, this is quickly a $3 million project, that, without, $1 million plus from the IRT, I don't think we could even consider.
So what do you need from us now? I mean, what you're saying
Nothing.
is, right, yeah, we're just letting him go forward.
Well, I'm not Joe, I want to make it clear, I'm not doing any engineering, any design. All I'm doing is working with Don to get to the IRT, work through
To
that
see if we
piece of
can
it.
move forward.
And then we've got time. If it still looks positive, then the only next thing I'd want to do is April. I'd want to send them up just to take a look at that piece again. That's, at the moment. And then if you need me to, this program was me, because I had literally just a couple weeks to get this together to get it to you. So how I configured the ball fields and stuff and laid them out, we can eliminate a basketball court. We can, there's lots of options here. But I needed to get you something that you could react to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Anybody else from the public? Anybody else? Don?
so we'll work with the IRT, but I'd also like to have your consent to see what I can do with a lease, you know, to get to work on the lease, obviously. If the RT's a go. If the RT's not, I'll report back to you all and tell you where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the lease, in my position, where I sit, 25 years after spending $2 million is not a good deal.
Right, and that, we asked for a different, right.
But we
Yeah,
also we did have this to present.
Right.
To understand, you know, the investment the town was looking at and to use that as part of the negotiations. I think that's the next sit-down step with the landowner.
And we haven't done that with him yet, in fairness. So he may have the same reaction that you do in a way, you know, wow, that's a little different than what I thought, and so that may change his perspective,
Yeah.
or not. So we haven't had those negotiations. This has come about very quickly.
Okay. Now then I'll hold my opinions.
Okay?
You were very restrained,
Really?
Joe, I must say. You were very restrained. Owens, anything else?
I think some of the concerns with the 25 years is, Timmy Davison is a 50-plus-year-old man, and he said, I don't know if I'm even gonna be alive in 25 years, so I can't make those judgments. So he was saying that basically he was gonna be moving on to family, and that those things would have to be negotiated beyond what he could say at the meeting.
Right.
And will, right. So we gotta go back and talk and understand what those details might be.
Oh, and is there any blasting of ledge if this goes forward?
Well, I'd like to say there's none, but I think I carried a little bit of money in there for some blasting. I just don't, I only know what was on the published soils resource data and what I saw out there in the field. What I saw was some shallow to bedrock, the land slopes away. What I'd like to do is try to hold grades as much as I can up towards North Raymond Road and fill, then terrace down, and then go to the lower field. But if there's trenching or
It's
irrigation-
Raymond, there's ledge.
Yeah,
There's ledge everywhere.
Yeah.
There's a big outcrop of ledge.
I know.
On our property, the bump down. Everywhere if you dig down, 3 feet or 4 feet.
something tells me.
We're on a slab.
Are
Our
you?
house is on a slab.
Right into the ledge.
There's a wetland across the road anyway, so.
Well, it's a good
With
foundation.
that, I don't have a wet basement.
Well, thank you, Owens, for doing
you.
this so quickly. I really
problem.
appreciate it. I know the holidays, tough time to carve out
Sorry,
the
I'm up for a
time.
challenge.
thank you
My
again
bigger
for your-
challenge is
for your
going down
work on this.
85 and not ending up in your yard.
Yeah, thank you, I already got one. Thank God all my blow-ups weren't out there, I mean, really.
Yeah.
Would have been a softer impact,
You should have turned them on.
like
Yeah.
bumper cars.
No, that's okay, we don't need anybody else in my yard.
And thank you, Emmy, for your work on this as well. And,
She's my silent partner on this one.
yeah, yeah.
Everything bad? Thank you. Don, this is a bound copy of the
Yeah,
report.
okay,
She's
thank you.
excited to do the vernal pools.
Yeah.
I hope she doesn't find any.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, be
Thanks,
careful.
Ellen. Drive carefully.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I know that.
Can we be all in this side?
What?
That's all right, I've been here before. I got Sue to back me up.
Just in case, or you may want to not.
Well, we can. So you. Okay, you'll just let me know. Okay.
Cute.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah, we can.
Next item on our agenda tonight is quitclaim deeds from Sue Carr. We have,
Sue's not here this evening, but we have the material.
yep. So we have 2 quitclaim deeds. My understanding, looking at these names, is both of these are from our recent program where we went to sell properties, and these landowners paid off their back taxes so that we wouldn't sell their properties. So we have one, map 42, lot 80, a quitclaim deed. We have another one, map 23, lot 021. I'd like to do them separately, please. So if somebody would make a motion. Do we need the numbers?
On the book,
Yep, just mapping lot for the quitclaim deeds, so map 42, lot 80.
Okay, I'm looking at the wrong page then, hold on.
Yeah. Move to approve,
I'm still not.
map 42, lot
80.
80.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor? Unanimous, 4-0. I'll send this down to be signed.
Oh, motion to approve map 23, lot 21.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Approved.
Somebody made that.
I know, it's work, it's cool. I'll sign it for you.
So if I remember correctly, one of these back taxes was in 5-digit territory and was caught up.
Right.
So that's a very large,
That's great.
back taxes have been caught up. Next item on the agenda is consideration of tax abatements from Kurt LaBelle, the assessor. We have, Joe, do you want to do this one?
Yeah,
I'll give you the paperwork it's right here.
Yeah, okay. Make a motion to grant an assessment to, an abatement, yeah. For Rodney Collard and Corey Perro, the amount of $144.80 for lot K0526R.
Second.
All those in favor? Approved, unanimous.
Make a motion to grant an abatement to Jeff Merrill and Susan Merrill, lot V009P, in the amount of $97.99.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Make a motion to grant an abatement to Nancy B. Reed, lot R0395R, in the amount of $720.59.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Make a motion to grant an abatement to Walter O'Connor Jr., lot 0090R, in the amount of $308.31.
Second.
All those in favor?
Total
Approved,
abatements were $1,271.49.
We should have a second page there for supplemental assessments, Joe. Is that possible?
I think it
Got
is.
a couple pages.
I'll sign these three and then,
I'll borrow his pen and sign 3.
yeah.
I hope there's 4.
Yep, there are. Get the sign out there. Oh.
Up here. Okay, so these are assessments, right? Supplemental assessments. First one is for lot 003010B, Sylvia Lydic, in the amount of $709.83.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Second one is lot 041050, Nathaniel Herto, in the amount of $322.65.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Third one is lot 031003, Merrill and Robin Farnsworth, the amount of $409.89.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Total amount, $1,442.37.
Okay, before we go any further here,
You gotta sign here.
I know, but don't we have to have one for each one of these? Is that what that is? That we have to be signing for each one of these abatements?
That's what I thought.
And there's only 2 here, and that's why I'm wondering, because it's looking,
Which one is this?
this one's saying here, sign, selectmen sign other 3, but I thought we had to have one for each one. This is 1,400 here. Did we do 14?
Is it a total page instead of individual pages?
Yes,
Okay,
You sure?
that's what it is.
That's what currently.
yeah, because it's 1447.
No, it's 1271, so it's not even matching up. Oh, wait a minute, there's 1442. No, they're not even,
There's two different, there should be one page for the supplemental, one page for the abatements.
It says the list.
1400 is the supplemental and 1200 should be the abatements.
1442,
Or 11
37. Yep, there
something.
you go.
Yeah.
All right, so I said.
I'm doing quick math in my head.
I'm glad you did it. Oh, I'm just gonna sign anywhere?
Yep.
All right, just checking to make sure we're signing enough stuff.
Should be 3.
You didn't sign the other ones, too?
What's that?
Did you sign the other two?
Yep.
Really look like they were acting together.
Probably there were 3 here, so.
Did I miss one? Yeah.
Did you
No,
do
I
that?
didn't.
No, you did that.
I did it.
All right. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. Anybody here from the public that would like to speak, please go up to the microphone. Introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Fay. I live at Spiller Hill Road. My wife and I also have property down in Lower Raymond Cape. I wanted to speak to you folks tonight about some proceedings that are going to go on tomorrow in this room. There's a public hearing held by the planning board to go over ordinance revisions for town meeting in, I guess, June of 2016. It's my understanding that I guess when they go through their public hearings and any sort of modifications that they go through as a result of that, it then comes across your desk for review, comment, and presumably approval. I think most of the things that come across your respective desks are pretty benign in nature, but there are a fair number of concerns on the part of myself and some of my neighbors on Lower Raymond Cape about some of these ideas and proposals they have for a couple of these ordinances. And you may have actually heard about these things already. I'm not sure if there's been correspondence, emails, letters in that regard yet, but I'm sure it'll be forthcoming. I guess the time limit here is what, a couple minutes, 3 minutes? So I won't go into excruciating detail, but there's a couple of ideas for revisions of existing ordinances, some of which are actually quite new. They were just approved at town meeting in 2014, that are being revised in such a way that the optics of it are actually quite poor in terms of making modifications that, to an outside observer, does give the feeling that these modifications are being made to accommodate a failed applicant, for lack of a better word. It's a very contentious project on Lower Raymond Cape. Has gone through probably a almost 4-year process. Approvals, starts and stops, an approval overturned by the Zoning Board of Appeals here in Raymond. And now there are ideas and thoughts and proposals that I think are going to be part of the ordinance changes that you'll be seeing if no changes are made tomorrow, that are very worrisome to a lot of neighbors. Because essentially, for lack of a better way to sort of phrase it, it really, takes this project that has basically been rejected, approved and rejected, and does pave the way for possible approval going forward. And that's a worrisome prospect for a lot of residents and taxpayers in that particular area. And that's the nature of it. And I guess, like, in an ideal world, I know you folks have the power to, when you do get these ordinance changes, you either can make a recommend. I've been to town meeting, I'm not sure what the exact wording is, You can make a recommendation for approval. You can recommend for, I guess, not granting or not granting approval, but an endorsement, or you can take no position. I guess if they remain unchanged, it would be ideal if you didn't recommend for approval, or at least like didn't take a position on it. But that's probably putting the cart before the horse at this juncture. Again, town meeting's gonna, excuse me, not town meeting, public hearing is gonna occur in this very room tomorrow night. I think it's gonna be packed. There's a lot of concern about this, and you know, if you want to watch on TV or attend, I think it would be instructive to maybe hear some of the concerns firsthand. But as I said, I'm sure like if you don't hear those concerns firsthand tomorrow, you'll certainly be hearing them, you know, in your inboxes or things like that. So,
Thank you, Kevin.
Great, thank you.
sure.
Other comments from the public? Step right up.
Thank you. I'm Peter Morgan. I'm now a resident on Bridges Lane. Moved here this past spring, and I simply want to support Kevin in the outline he presented. My concern is that the issue he referred to, the residents are happy with the outcome. So for the rules to be changed in the future to accommodate a different outcome, I haven't heard anyone in the residents of Raymond who want this changed. It simply seems to be an agenda somewhere that doesn't exist, at least in Raymond. It exists on Fry Island, perhaps, but if it comes back, we're happy with the outcome as it exists now, and you will hear that in the future. So I appreciate your giving us time here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Step right up.
Hello, I'm Barb Lovell. I live on Wild Acres, the end of Raymond Cape, and I've spoken to you before, and I would reiterate Kevin's and Peter's concerns about what we suspect is going to come before you. It is of great chagrin, should there be a change in something that was written by the powers that be, that now seems to be thought of as a revision that would accommodate an applicant. And I understand from other side of the pond that there are many that are not in favor of that as well. But certainly we as residents close at hand feel that this change would be detrimental not just to us now, but in the future, because what happens now is going to happen throughout Raymond shoreland area, and we are shoreland people. And I'd like your consideration and deep thought about what's going to come before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Anybody else have anything for the public on this topic or any others? Seeing none, we'll move on to selectmen comment.
I just
Anybody?
want to say, be careful driving home, please. You have a long way to go. Yeah, so please be careful driving home.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Sam, do you have anything in the library this month?
Not this month,
Okay.
next month.
Anybody else?
Thank you. Drive carefully.
You do.
Don, town manager's report?
Okay, quick update on Ala Mexicana Fire Inspection. They found 3 de minimis issues in their report. Those have now been corrected, and so the license has been approved and issued. Is that correct, Sue? Yes. So that's the update on that. Confirmed dates for upcoming regular meetings: February 9th, March 8th, April 12th.
So the new one on this list that we haven't heard before should be the April 12th one, correct?
That would be correct.
So the
Correct,
other
sir.
2 we should have heard before.
Yes. Do you want just the newest one, or do you like the repeat?
No, I like the repeat, just to
Okay.
confirm, so I can go through my calendar. I don't know about the rest of them, but
All
it
right.
helps me.
Okay. So yeah, the new one would be April 12th.
Anybody got a conflict with April 12th?
I haven't gotten there yet.
Keep rolling.
No, hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, April 12th. While we're talking about meetings, we may have to schedule a workshop for the report on town positions and merit pay that we've done. It may make sense to schedule that as a workshop sometime between now and the next meeting, I'm hoping. But we'll find out more about that hopefully in the next week or so. Don, continue.
Actually, that's a good segue. I'll get back to Martin Luther King Day, but so I talked to Don Tyler, the consultant who's doing the position classification merit pay study. He tells me that he should have his preliminary analysis done by the end of the week, and so it's, I think I told Mike this last week, but I did tell him about the time urgency, and he gets that. So we're on the brink of getting the report and scheduling that with Mike, a workshop meeting. So I'm hoping that we see something back by the end of the week, possibly.
So we'll send out some once we actually have the report in hand, we'll send out some possible dates.
Correct. Next issue? Okay, Monday, January 18th is Martin Luther King Day. So I guess on Monday, that will be a holiday for me, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, happy Monday for me. Happy Martin Luther King Day. Okay, so because as you know, the office is closed to the public on that day. So that's what I have, other than to tell you that we've begun, of course, work on the budget, and I've talked to the department heads, and I've talked to various other folks involved in that process, and we're going to, obviously, as we have in prior years, try to hit your goals and to make this hopefully a easy and enjoyable, if there's such a thing, budget process, and so we're well into that, and you'll hear soon.
Thank you, Don.
Yep.
Teresa?
Make a motion to accept the treasurer's warrants. $85,509.98.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Can I have a motion to go in executive session?
So moved. No.
We have to
Yep.
go a
I was
little
gonna
more
do that, but I
official.
learned.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session under Title I MRSA subsection 405(6)(a) to discuss the town manager's annual review.
Thank you. Why don't we retire to the back room?
Was there a second?
Oh,
Second.
all those in favor? Thank you, Sue. All those in favor? Do I have another motion?
Motion adjourned.
Second?
All those in favor?